Hi guys, last session. If you wouldn't mind taking your seats, that would be fantastic. And so television, all about pictures. So this last session is going to celebrate the work of two of our finest camera people. And so I have with me Paul Lange, who is furthest away, who is a documentary camera person who's worked on everything from arts to feature movies to some of the most important things we'll see on our screen. Next to me is Ed Moore. Ed has recently been doing the new series of Red Dwarf and many other things, lots of technical wizardry, so they're here to share their experience with you. How many people in the audience actually shoot themselves? Quite a lot, because competition. Because obviously in the industry, the way the industry's going, one, it's a great thing because it enables you to do things you'd never been able to do in the past. But secondly, I think on high-end productions, and I think we heard yesterday, particularly in documentaries, about the choice of self-shooting or working with a craft cameraman. There are lots of choices. So here today, I hope that not only will you celebrate their craft, but you will ask them questions. So when you go away from here for your own shooting, you can think, yes, let's bring that extra dimension to the work. We're going to take questions as we go, as per the last couple of sections. So think about what you might like to ask. Stick your hand up when I come to you, and on we go. So, can I just ask you briefly, starting with Paul, what does the job mean to you? Why?
Why? That's a good question. I think it's a job I never ever thought I'd do in my life, but I just find myself in the most amazing places, filming things I'd never thought I'd ever point a camera at. And it's just being put in that position, that privileged position of whether you're touching somebody's life, you're going into their lives, you're being part of what they do in their everyday life, and there's something quite special about that.
And Ed, that's completely different for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I hate people, and I started in theatre. I was doing lots of theatre lighting design, and I really loved that world. So, like Paul, it wasn't something I knew really. I didn't really know it was a job, and I kind of found my way into it through an arcane route. I think everyone doing this job has got a different way in. There doesn't seem to be one thing, but for me, I now can't imagine doing anything else, and I'm probably unemployable in any other capacity.
Just tell us the route that you took in.
Well, after doing the theatre lighting for 5 or 6 years, I got a job in my gap year at Yorkshire TV, which I think we might have in common.
We do indeed.
Actually, weirdly, in the sound department for a bit of work experience cleaning mud off cables on Emmerdale. And then I managed to find a job in the lighting rental department, Provision up there. And then university was doing student TV, did that for sort of 2.5 years, because after 2.5 years, some friends and I decided we want to make stuff. So I kind of bailed on my degree, which was a fun conversation with my mother, and kind of went for it.
And Paul?
I couldn't have started any further away at all. I used to work on frigates and nuclear submarines at Devonport Dockyard.
Okay, that's way cooler.
It wasn't at the time.
Can I change my story?
You have to tell a story now of how you made the jump from the dockyards
Good question.
to where you're sitting now.
I finished my apprenticeship as an electrician, fully qualified electrician, and I just wrote to the BBC. In the old days, no internet, so handwritten letter. Dear BBC, can you give me a job as an electrician? And I got a job as an electrician at Broadcasting House, in radio, changing light bulbs, which was not what I was used to. And then one day someone came to film in Broadcasting House, and I said, where do you come from? And they said, well, we're from Ealing Studios. And I said, well, I fancy a job there. So I wrote there, and then I started as a spark at BBC Ealing Studios. I didn't know what a best boy, what a gaffer, what a clapper loader was, but I just ended up on these fantastic old stages that they'd filmed The Cruel Sea and Cold It's, and it was just like, I was like in amongst what I was as a kid and seeing all these films. It's great.
You starting in movies, as it were. How did you actually make the transition into factual programs, factual filming?
Well, at the BBC film unit at the time, there were 60 film crews all working on film, and everything, all the output, whether it was from period drama like Bleak House or anything like that, right down to the Blue Peter foreign assignments. Everything was shot by those crews. So you go in, you'd be allocated a drama for 4 weeks or 8 weeks, then you go back and you'd be offered a Horizon or a Panorama or something like that. So you get a real mixture. So you had the two disciplines. So 1 minute you'd be doing documentary, and the next minute you'd be doing drama. So, and those same DOPs would work on both. Obviously some specialised in others, but all those guys worked on them right across the board. So it was great training.
So you made a conscious choice, though, to move into documentary.
I did, yeah. Everyone would love to work on big feature films with big money, but I just found my niche, and I had two great cameramen that I was trained by, and we travelled the world together, and I'm now working with the directors that they worked with, so we just carry on going. But it's a niche, I sort of found myself falling into, really. Okay,
so we're going to look at Paul's first clip. Do you want to set this up, Paul? It's Cruel Separation.
Yeah, this is, I don't know if any of you remember, in 1973 there was a coup in Chile, and Costa Gavras made a film called Missing with Sissy Spacek and Jack Lemmon. I urge anyone to watch it, it's a great film. And Sissy Spacek played a character who was in real life, Joyce Horman, and her husband was tortured and killed in the room that you're going to see on the clip now. So we had one go at this, really, to film her seeing what you're about to see. So let's probably just leave it at there.
Okay, let's see the clip and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
I've heard many stories over the years, details about different sections of the stadium where people were detained, where they were very cold, where they had no proper facilities, where they were tortured. And this section here has a lot of rooms, and some of those rooms were for that purpose. The idea that so many people were here, almost 10,000 people came through here. So it's a different view of a stadium. And then, of course, there was a place that people were taken sometimes at night for tortures and interrogation. So it's a scenario that is not, it's not pleasant for anyone to think about. I don't think they let us in here before, or nobody wanted to go in here before. It's probably important for everyone to see.
So a hugely poignant scene. Can you take us back there? What was going through your mind before you went and filmed that scene? Because you presumably knew she was going to be quite upset.
Yeah, sorry to start with that clip. It's a bit depressing, wasn't it? We'd already filmed with her for a week. We built up to this, and they finally gave us permission to film in the stadium where her husband was tortured and killed. So I didn't even get to wreck it. So we just walked down behind her. I didn't even know she was going to turn the lights on. So it was a real busking it job, but it worked. She turned the lights on, but I just left her to it. The director didn't come in with me, the sound man didn't come in with me. And you'll see when she goes in, I just back off. So many people go in, they want the emotion, they want to go for the close-up. There's no close-ups in that scene. Not because I didn't shoot any, so there was nothing for the editor to use.
Yeah.
So I just kept it all, the sound does it. The sound, you can hear how upset she is. You don't need to see her upset. She turned her back to me, I just let her go. Yeah. And when she left, she turned the lights out, which was great for the scene. I didn't ask her to do any of that. And the only other close-up that I thought of doing was the tap dripping in that.
That's because you heard the tap, presumably.
Yeah.
And thought, oh, this is the sequence with no cutaways because...
There's no cutaways.
You can't, because it would be crass. But you heard the tap and thought, that's my...
That was the thing. I wanted to shoot it with the lights on and the lights off. And that's the only thing I did afterwards, was just get a cutaway of the tap with the lights on. But the director never came in, neither did the sound man. So it was hard to shoot because I filmed in these sort of places before, from the concentration camps and things, and a lot of directors will say, oh, you've got to get in close, and I find it hard to do that. I don't think you need to go in close. I think everyone can see she's upset. And I think you need to stand back and just let the film breathe. And there's not many shots in that scene.
No.
There's 2 or 3 probably.
Yes.
And it all just goes at one. I mean, it's just when it happened, I was lucky. She turned the lights on. It would have been a completely different sequence if she never turned the lights on. I don't know what I would have done.
Yes.
You get lucky sometimes.
Yeah, and obviously completely handheld, presumably.
Yeah, completely handheld, yeah.
And did you talk to us a little bit about knowing how that sequence could be cut? Were you editing in your head before you...
Yeah, definitely. I would urge anybody, before you start shooting, go and sit in the edit. Just think about... You do need certain shots to make the scene work, but you can do that in a way where you can just have one long shot and just look for a couple of cutaways. If the scene's working, just let it breathe, just let it happen. You don't need to keep doing fancy shots or moving the camera. I always say that if something's happening in front of you, just let it happen. Don't resize or anything. And one of the old guys that used to teach me, he said, if you think the shot's over, just wait. Just wait another 5 or 10 seconds and something else will happen. She'll turn, or she'll say something, or she'll walk into that room. And you would have missed it if you'd rushed around. So it was just, that's the way I approached it, really.
So would you say there's an element of psychology in your work, is understanding how people are going to react in a situation so that you know when to stay still, when to hold a shot?
Yeah, you do. I think you respect somebody. I mean, it's a very personal moment for her, and also she's going to remember that moment. And I didn't want her to remember it because there was this Cornish cameraman in the room with her. I wanted her to remember it for the reasons that she was there. So, me, putting a camera right next to her, it's not going to work. Yeah. So you do. I always feel like that. I mean, that's the way I try and work, really.
So, Ed, we're going to now look at something that's the complete antithesis of this, so an incredibly complex setup. But you work with a script, don't you? Do you have to edit in your head, or it's a different approach?
I think you do. I mean, I'm working, Paul is too, with the director very closely on that, and we definitely shoot for the edit, just because, especially in UK TV, you just don't have the money to shoot everything. I think there's sort of American approach in drama where you're almost collecting stuff, that every conceivable angle, and then the sort of overall showrunner exec will edit. But for us to get the most bang for our buck, we really try and only shoot the shots that we want. So yeah, I think we do. And you also have to protect yourself a bit, because another thing that seems to happen in the UK is many of the execs, whilst wonderful, kind of come from a script background. So if you have a very strong visual goal, and I'd like to think that I do most of the time, if you shoot lots and lots of kind of coverage just automatically, there's a very good chance that it will be used. So I try and say to directors, let's just not shoot anything we don't like. Like, let's not do anything just because it should be done, because every scene must have a wide shot and 2 close-ups.
Totally agree. It's the same, if you don't shoot it, they're not going to use it.
So slight self-preservation, I feel, going on here. But also what you're doing is actually making a choice.
Yeah, I think that's crucial, because it's there's a saying I love, like, to the man with a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And if you have, in the edit, you have so much flexibility and so much choice. On set you do too. You can do anything you want. So if you don't look at the block of marble and see the statue, you don't know what you're aiming for. You could be doing anything. So, and then you get into a kind of state that is no longer filmmaking. It's just kind of, well, what about that? What about that? It never results in good work. You've got to have something in mind and just claw everything away until you've got what you intended.
Paul, do you feel the same?
Yeah, absolutely, totally agree. I think you could, all of you, 40, 50 people of you on a drama in a room, you're all trying to make that rectangle work, and there's a million ways to do it. So it's like Ed said, you add something to it rather than just shoot everything, because, else it just becomes, wide shot, mid shot, close up, reverse.
Yeah. Okay, we're going to see a clip now from an upcoming series of Vera, which is a period police procedural playing on ITV.
It's actually not period, it just looks like it because it's set in the north.
Ah.
But many have made the same misunderstanding.
Thank you for the correction. You're getting a sneak preview, guys, because, as I say, Ed's managed to persuade his execs that you can see this here today, but you're not got to tell anybody anything about it when you leave this room, or you'll have to get killed. Anyway, can we see Vera, please? Brenda Blethyn's hat that made me feel it was period.
Yes, yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
So, talk us through that, how you set it up, how you thought about lighting it, and...
Well, I mean, first of all, it's probably fair to say that it's taken me 10 years to get into those kind of dramas. I've always wanted to do those kind of bigger dramas, and I think that was the 16th interview I did that year. So that was the kind of hit rate it took, because it gets that chicken and egg thing where, oh, well, to do it, you need to have done it before. So it was the biggest budget TV thing I've done. But then actually, once you're actually doing it, it's just like any other shoot. It's people standing around in the cold with bad coffee, and I think you just have to trust your instincts. You have to assume that you've been hired for a reason. So the director and I hadn't worked together before, but it was a really good pairing by the producer, and we wanted to keep it very moody, to not to kind of make the audience lean in a bit, to not just explain everything visually, to kind of keep some intrigue. And that location was very challenging. It's meant to be a university campus, and they had tried every university kind of in the northeast, who all said yes until they read the whole script, which isn't very complimentary to university. So it was this weird old place. So trying to make the shoot logistically work there, it was difficult. So you kind of, the job is, you're always got a foot in both camps. You're trying to be creative, and you're also managing this sort of machine, and trying to get the camera where the director wants it, and the kind of look that will please everyone. So it does feel like you're spinning a lot of plates on things like that.
Talk about the lighting for, obviously, we've just seen a sequence where Paul has used available light, and he was very lucky that his subject put the lights on for him. And now we come to you, and you have lighting at your disposal. What did you do with this particularly? Because obviously the light plays quite a big part in evoking the sense of the building.
Well, you've got equipment, but you've still got 10 hours. So everything is just a is kind of this 3D game of chess, and you have ideally you'd have those lights there, but then you want to schedule it so you've got a scene, so you have time to move those lights to the next place. So it's a lot of juggling. And time of day plays a huge part. So with something like that, where the sun's going to be, it is very important to know, because in many cases you want it completely the other side of the building, so you can just artificially do something that fits. So I think pretty much every light source in that is artificial. I don't think any of it really is playing as daylight, apart from maybe those exterior crane shots. So you want to have that sort of control. So my lighting philosophy tends to be just do as little as possible, but so ideally get a really big light really far away. And that sometimes is quite complicated. There, for example, we needed a really weird cherry picker thing that was like on caterpillar tracks, because it was the only thing that could get the light up to that height and that would fit into that courtyard. So you're kind of dealing with all that stuff as well. But I'm just, one part of this huge team. So a lot of it, I'll just say, vaguely, it'd be nice to have that kind of light there, and then this amazing electrical department will go and figure out ways of doing it. So nothing happens in a vacuum.
So it's all a big teamwork thing.
Yeah. So there would have been there's a gaffer and a best boy sort of assist the best boys generally doing all the pre-rigging and all of that kind of stuff, and then there was a team of maybe, I think on that location, 5 or 6 electricians, just because there's so many long cable runs and things to make all that work. So you trust the team. On the recce, you try and give them as much information as possible about what you might want, and then if you're lucky, as I did, to have such a great team, it just magically appears through much hard work. But it's helpful for me that I sort of did lighting in theatre, and then kind of coming through the lighting rental place, I understand maybe a bit more than as Paul does as well, by the sound of it. It helps to know that cable really is heavy, and that light really is heavy, so you don't ask for stuff and then go, oh, actually, it'd be better over there. Like, that doesn't make friends with the electrical department.
I'm going to go quickly on to another clip whilst we're on the theme of lighting, because the next clip we're going to show, Paul, if you'd like to set it up, you decided to light a scene purely with candles. So we're going to see Mozart.
Oh, Mozart in Prague. Yeah, that's right. It was a film with this tenor, Rolando Besson, who was basically tracing how they put on the first show of Don Giovanni at the Estates Theatre in Prague. And we filmed it at Barendorf Studios. I don't know if you filmed it, Red.
I haven't, no.
And it's a real old-fashioned studio. It's massive, like a big barn. But we had the set designer from Amadeus, who did the feature film Amadeus. So he came out of retirement to build the set for us. And he said, well, if we're going to go to all this trouble of doing an authentic set, let's light it authentically. So we just had 300 double-wick candles, and we made little sconces for them. We put a little silver reflector behind them. We had them all over. Even the orchestra had candles over their score, which is a bit scary. And the only concession we made, the conductor insisted that he had a little light above him, which we had a Chinese lantern. So we filmed the finale under candlelight. It was a real moment. So my gaffer, he had his gloves on, we just had a lighter. That's all he was doing, which is funny. But I'd learned from that years and years and years ago. I worked on Persuasion, which was a Jane Austen adaptation at the BBC. And John Daly was the cameraman, and I was the gaffer on that. Oh, best boy, sorry. And he lit that final scene just with candles. And I remember him doing it, and what a risk it was. We only had 500 ASA film in those days. And everyone's looking at the monitor going, oh, I can't see anything. And that's what they were doing in Barendorf. We turned the house lights off, and you could just hear the producers in the back going, does this guy know what he's doing? It just seemed so dark. And I was just saying, let your eyes get adjusted to it, it'll be fine. And then they did, and the scene just came out. And luckily we filmed it. We had 3 cameras on it. They said they'd do the finale of the opera 3 times, which they did for us. Hopefully you'll see a bit now.
So we're going to see a bit from the top of this production, which you'll see a little bit where you have got the opera singer talking to camera, surrounded by the candles. And what you're also going to see in addition is another sequence which Paul's going to explain how he shot. But let's see the clip first, please.
Don Giovanni, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart's opera of all operas, is to me one of the greatest artistic achievements of all time. Over 2 centuries, Don Giovanni has been continually restaged and reinvented in the world's finest opera houses. The finale is terrifying and unforgettable. If you see one opera before you die, make sure it is this one. But what would it have looked and sounded like in 1787 during its first ever public performance? To find out, I came here to Prague, where the premiere took place. We are going to restage Don Giovanni's finale to understand the challenges Mozart faced, so we can all see and hear it as the first audience did. I will find out how the instrument sounded, what the performers wore, and the special effects Mozart used. He was not only an amazing and extraordinary musician, but also a very courageous artist. He took the conventions of his day, transformed them, played with them, and created his own way. My name is Rolando Besson, and I am an opera singer. I'm going to throw myself into the 18th century world in which Mozart moved. Explore the social and political ideas that surrounded and inspired him, and bring us close to Don Giovanni as Mozart himself imagined it.
The house was packed with 1,000 people.
The emperor in Vienna was unsure about whether, the court would like this piece.
This is the dark side of the Enlightenment. How far can liberties go before they become dangerous?
So, get ready, fasten your seatbelts, here we go. I became an opera singer after someone heard me singing in the shower. Mozart's operas are among my favorites. They express what it is to be human, what brings us together, and what pulls us apart. I have become fascinated with the maestro and immersed myself in his life through his music and through his letters.
Could you explain how you got in the shower with an opera singer?
Yeah, that was interesting. That's the first morning we'd ever met. I wouldn't suggest it with everyone you film. We met him in his hotel room in Prague, and we just sat and chatted for a bit. And this was part of his story, that he got discovered in Brazil singing in the shower, and his neighbour heard him, and he became a world-class tenor. So I said to the director, well, why don't we just film him in the shower? And the guy said, well, I'm not going to ask him. So I asked him, and he said, yeah, sure. So we stripped off, not everything, and filmed it in the shower, and it was just great fun. And you think, well, that set the tone for the whole film, because he was just so easygoing. I think, well, if he's going to let me climb in the shower with him on the first day of filming and film him, and it's a lovely little sequence, and it just set the tone for the whole film. He wasn't this precious opera singer who wasn't going to let us do anything. He sort of set the bar there and then, and we knew he was going to be easy to work with. But, that's how his story started, so it just made common sense to stick him in the shower.
So, obviously, you decided to be cheeky enough to ask. Just talk to me about the relation, and your director didn't want to ask. Just talk to me a little bit, the pair of you, about the relationship with the directors you work with.
Well, it's a director I've worked with for years, Guy Evans. He's a lovely, lovely guy. And we're like two old men go filming. But he just he gives you that freedom to just try things. And it's not, well, I speak to the artist. It's a collaboration. We all muck in together. And I felt confident enough that Guy wouldn't mind if I asked him. So he could only say no, but it looks great in the film. And I think you've just got to have that confidence. Some people you wouldn't dream of asking them to climb in the shower with, obviously. But Rolando was funny. He was good fun. He was relaxed the moment we got there. You just think, well, why not? And he was like it for the 2 weeks we were there.
What stage in the production are you brought in? Because you're a little bit more than a gun for hire, aren't you?
Well, sometimes I am, but I'd like to be involved more in pre-production than I actually am on documentaries, because I could save people a lot of money. But that's sort of, so we'll get Paul in possibly for a meeting before we fly off to America for 3 weeks. And you look at the schedule and you look at all these holes in it and think, well, why didn't they get me in a week ago? I mean, you know, you can't drive from there to there. It's a flight. But stuff like that. And also the sequences that you'd like to film that you never had time to prep or nobody thought of doing. And the director's under a lot of stress as well, because they're not given enough prep time anymore. So it's that I'd love to be involved more than I was on the bigger productions, for sure, production meetings, and for Do a Drama, then you do get to see the script and you all sit through it. But on documentaries, you're not really brought in very much before. So you are thinking on your feet the moment you get there.
With the directors you work with a lot, there presumably is at least a phone call which says, I've got this, I've got this commission, this is what I'm thinking about, this is how I want it to look, this is how we want to set the tone. Presumably those sort of conversations.
Yeah, I do have conversations on the phone.
Yeah.
But the majority of the directors I work with, I've got this small team of directors I work with, and we've worked together for so long that you sort of just get on with it, I have to say. But we don't really overanalyze anything, because it just isn't the time. So a lot of the time we know the bullet points we have to hit and story. And unfortunately nowadays it has to be so prescriptive that on a documentary now, the producers and the back end want to know what these people are going to say before you even met them, which is very difficult. So you have to hit those points. So it's not quite so freeform as it used to be. So you have to hit those marks, and if you tick all those boxes and you get something else extra, then that's a bonus.
I think the directors are under so much pressure. I think they always have been. It's such a difficult job. And I just see them as our main constituents. So I'm there for the director, and on any shoot really, but certainly what I see a lot in drama, the director, there's so many people saying no to the director. I think I try and make sure that they've just got at least one person that will always go with them on a journey, and try and back them up and try and tease out whatever idea kind of is in their head.
The director on this, he has a famous line. He says, "Lange, it's like being pecked at by 1,000 chickens." Yeah. And it is. It's all these people who want a bit of him.
The director, he'll probably watch this clip and never forgive me for telling the story, but the director on Vera, we were on the recce's, and he was having the sort of third degree on scheduling things for sort of much further on, and we were still trying to decide what the locations would be and how it would work, and he just turned to the first AD and said, "Can you just let us dream?" Then kind of walked it back a bit. But I knew what he meant. Like, you don't want to be answering questions about week 4 when you haven't even decided how your film's going to look yet. It's nice to have a bit of room before the bureaucracy sets in.
Okay, that's a good stage to get to. Have we got any questions at this stage? Okay, got one down here in the middle of the front row, mic there, and one person up there. Okay.
Hi. When we're analysing in essays, we often have to decode certain shots. So I was just wondering, to what extent are you consciously trying to encode shots with meaning versus like just doing it because it looks nice or because it's logical?
I think, well, certainly when I was studying film at university, and it was very much like seen as, the film was a text, and every single part of every frame was probably thought about. And then I got into it and realised that almost nothing is sometimes. It's just sometimes you're winging it, and you have the things that are going to look good, and you're cold and tired, and you do those things. And other times you try and put more into it. I think certainly the more I've done, the more I've tried to put something in, but it's difficult. Sometimes the best thing you can do as a DP is not try and show off too much. Just try and step back. Don't overdo it. Let the performance or whatever it is you're filming be its own thing, and kind of be guided by that. 'Cause I think if you try and force your hand a bit, you can end up with. That's more what commercials are about. I do commercials as well. They're the place to sort of show off and do the stuff. With the on the dramas, you can get into the kind of film school. Are you a low angle or you more distant or wide? I think that does become a kind of a language with the director, but it becomes an instinctive thing, really. I don't think you are really talking in those terms on every shot.
No, I totally agree with Ed. I don't analyse how I'm going to shoot something. I think it's totally instinctive. I wouldn't get caught up in all that analysing your shots or thinking, well, I need to do this, I need to do that. You don't need to do everything. If something's happening in front of you, just let it happen. Sure, you go into some sequences, and for a bit of fun, the director said, I want it to look like this film, or I want to recreate these shots from this movie, which is great fun. You play around with that, and you look at the film and you look at the shots. But I think the right shots will fit the mood for what you're doing. And I think, if you're doing something, that's sort of a bit racier or sort of a video or something, then sure, you can have fun with the camera. But for other stuff, you keep it still. And I think you'll do that instinctively. I don't think you should go into a shoot over-analysing everything. I don't know if Ed storyboards everything or not.
Only very technical things.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's difficult to. Most directors I work with do the same thing, which is they very much like to plan it out because these shows are expensive to make and you want to have something, but it's almost immediately thrown out because then if you don't do that, what happens on a drama is you get the actors into the space, and the actors might be miffed for whatever reason or in a different mood to you. You get them on set and you put them in the space, and suddenly you're really carefully thought out shots that that dollies and you cross the line and do the thing. Doesn't work at all, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen that, and it never works to try and just force your idea onto something that doesn't work. Like if the actors are just like, well, why would I go over there? They're probably right, unless they're just really, really trying to screw with you. If the actors don't feel the reality of the scene, it's just not going to be. It's not going to be something worth filming, I think, sometimes. So. But yeah, I think instinctively you do think about stuff like that. But when you've done it for a while, I don't think you would talk in those terms in planning.
Yeah.
Question at the top here.
All right. Hi everyone. My question is, when you're dealing with a serious subject matter, whether it be real or fictional, my question is, what sort of pressure does that put on your role as DOP? Because you're also trying to be respectful to the subject matter, but you're also trying to make your program entertaining. I wasn't sure whether to stand up or sit down, but I've sort of made my decision at this point. There's no going back.
It's probably one for you, Paul.
Yeah, it is a tough one because I did a film years ago with my partner Lou, who's in the audience, and we followed 12 people who were dying for a year, probably over a year. And you think, my God, this is going to be so depressing. But we probably had, it's not meant to sound the way it is, but we had more fun doing that film. Because sure, there are times when they're talking and it's sad and everyone goes down a gear and everybody doesn't fool around. But as soon as that moment's finished, you're all laughing and joking again. And it's an up thing. And I think you just need to know when you can tone it down. And I think it's like a gentleman here just said, I think you instinctively know when to do it. And sure, it's a program, it's entertainment at the end of the day, but you can be respectful of that. And I think you know when to take it down and stop fooling around, and everyone goes quieter and you do it, and afterwards you wait for that person to come back. And I think that's the way to approach it. Again, don't overthink it. If you're a sensitive person, and if you're making a film with a sensitive subject, you'll know when it's right to do that. And you know when it's right to stop asking questions or to put the camera down. I mean, a lot of times we would talk to people without the camera on the shoulder, and then when it felt right, we'd just get the camera up, and it was just, our rapport was still going. If you just keep going, you're just going to get diminishing returns. So know when to switch it on, know when to put it on your shoulder, and I think you could be there all day and you could get 3 minutes of film, it'll be fantastic. But if you're there all day and you just keep plugging away at somebody, you're not going to get anything. So I think less is more. And I think if you can get somebody's reaction that's honest on camera, then you've done a good job.
For me, I think I've never done anything with a subject matter that anything like Paul's done, really. So I would say though that it's important to respect the processes of the people you're working with. Like, it's a huge people skills job. I think the DP is also probably the biggest manager on set. For example, you've probably got 20 or 30 people who are, you're responsible for. So if you've got the cast, you've got the director, so I think if filming is fun, there's no doubt, and sometimes it can get a bit giddy. I think sometimes you just have to watch the people skills side. Like, there are people who don't like working like that, and I mean, particularly with cast and directors sometimes. So it's important to just give them their space to dream. I'm so distracted by the sound guys just in the shot. Yeah. Okay. Move over. Get behind the camera.
Okay, can we do the technical bit now? Because I know Paul has quite a lot to say about the technical bit, or not. Everybody, a lot of questions, particularly on film shoots, are what camera are you using, what lenses, what lighting, this, that and the other. Have you got the latest this, the latest that? And yes, there are fashions and trends and good cameras to use, but what is both of your views on that?
I'll let Ed ask first.
Well, I think, yeah, you can get a bit carried away, but I understand why, and I was and am exactly the same, because sometimes you, when you're starting out, that's what's accessible, talking about the tools. I think now when it comes to the cameras, all the cameras are great. So I almost just defer the decision of what camera to shoot on for either, physically what size it is, or what the VFX department want, or all of that sort of thing. I think you definitely have a foot in the creative and a foot in the technical, and you can't. I think it's a mistake to go, I don't deal with technical stuff at all, because often the people that say that can tell you everything about every film stock ever released and how to cross process it and all that. So I think there's a thing that actually people don't like talking about digital stuff, and that's seen as not creative. I think if you want authorship over what you're doing, you should understand the means of production. And the moment that you allow someone into that thing, even with the best will in the world, you're starting to lose traction. So I have made sure, for example, that I understand the kind of the basics of the color science, how the digital imaging, all that stuff works, so that I'm not relying on a DIT or a post workflow where suddenly the image doesn't look the way you want. But I mean, honestly, that sort of stuff you can just Google anything. Like, it's easy to educate yourself on that. What isn't easy is knowing where to put the camera or where to put the light.
I agree with Ed as well. I mean, somebody rings me up and said, "Oh, have you used this camera?" I go, "Yeah, of course I have." I'm straight on the internet going, "How the hell does this work?" I'm not technical at all. I came from a film background, but I'm not a Luddite. I don't throw stones at Alexas or anything. I think also for a documentary, the budget's smaller, so it's a bit like Ed. I'm told what I'm going to use, so you haven't got fantastic big chip cameras, but it's a tool for the job. It's the same. Ed probably has nicer lenses than I get to use, but we're all aiming for that rectangle. And if my budget means that I can only use a C300 with EF lenses on, that's what I'll use. And it's not about the kit. I understand how it works, or I've got an assistant who will tell me. But it's not about how big and shiny it is at this end. I'd love to use lots more kit if I could, but on a documentary you haven't got the personnel either. So very rarely now do I get an assistant, which is a struggle. So they have all these bright ideas of using sort of all these, tracks, dollies, jibs, and everything else. And I just say, well, who's going to use it? Because I'm not an octopus. And you have to also know when to stop and say, no, we can't use it. If you want to use that, we will get an assistant. And feel free to stand your ground, because you're just going to go out on your own. You're going to kill yourselves. You're going to, my back's in pieces. Ed's probably is as well.
This guy's has gone.
Yeah, he's gone, yeah. Bad posture. And you say yes to a lot of things, and you end up doing handheld all day. And it is crippling. And you have to sort of know when to sort of say, well, I can't take all that kit. So I've got off the subject a little bit, but I think technically I'm not to speed as much as Ed is, but if you give me a camera to use, I'll learn how to use it.
I think it's empowering to know the stuff. There is definitely a thing where the kit feels like a kit can become a substitute for cinematography. Definitely, I see that a lot with young DPs where it will become like, you know, using that set of lenses or that filter or doing something to kind of mess with the image is very, very important to them. And I think often one set of lenses to another really doesn't make as much difference as we would like to think it does. Certainly doesn't make
Your lighting still has to be good.
Yeah, if you move the light like 6 inches, the image will be a lot more different than if you swap from set A to set B of lenses. So, but it can be intimidating starting off a project to going, oh, you know, I'm a DP, I'm meant to give this a look. Like, how can I do that? Well, one thing I can do is do endless lens tests and endless stuff, and like ultimately that's a crutch, and you're going to have to shoot something worth watching. And the lenses and filters aren't going to help with that, really.
How many of you shoot on your phones? Not as many as I thought. What do you think about shooting on your phone? Is there value to it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was asked to do, it was a drama recon thing up in Wales, and it was about these kids who'd been attacked by a polar bear or something up in Norway. And we had this big old camera. We were trying to make it look shaky and handheld. It just wasn't working. So I said, well, what did they film the actual attack on? He said, well, they used an iPhone. I said, well, why don't we use an iPhone? Oh, it's not up to tech spec. So we said, well, we'll give it to the actors. And we gave them the iPhone. They filmed the sequence. It was exactly how it was meant to look. So they filmed it. And I just stood outside the tent and heard them doing what they were doing. We played it back, and it was fine. That's what they used. I think it is a tool for the job. And also, if you're in a documentary situation, if everything breaks down and you've got something that's about to happen in front of you, sure, you're going to grab that iPhone, and if you can still frame it nicely, you can still light it. Don't be scared of technology. It would be a lot lighter and be easier for my back if I was using an iPhone. Yeah, I've seen some stuff on the web that's shot on an iPhone. It just looks fantastic. I don't know how on earth they did it.
Go out and experiment, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You can achieve amazing things, I think. Okay, let's move on to our next clip. This is one of Ed's. It's for Channel 4, and it's for a series called Drifters. Would you like to set it up?
So Drifters was kind of when I got into main. I did lots of second unit stuff, and then when I moved into main unit, it was a lot of kind of half-hour comedy. So this is a really good example of that, where you're doing kind of 8-9 pages a day, which is quite tough. There's not that many DPs working in comedy, and I think that's because it's a bit unrewarding visually. They're an absolute dream to work on because everyone in comedy is lovely and it's really nice to do something funny. But it's punishing because they don't ultimately, some do, but a lot of people don't really care as what it looks like unless it's, and they certainly don't want you doing what I did on Vera, which is make everyone silhouetted. That they want to see the faces. They're convinced that it's only funny if you can see the faces, which is going to become a shock to the Radio 4 comedy department. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of kind of desire to use handheld to inject kind of energy into it, which we did on this. So you be the judge of whether that worked or not. But so it's a balance. You're trying to bring a look to it, but you're also you're a lot more subservient to the comedy than you are on something like Vera.
Okay, let's have a look.
Come on, guys, I want a picture.
What's that, Sarah? Decorate a candle? Could do, or I could actually add some wow value to the occasion by dropping a floating candle into a goldfish bowl, complete with live fish, which guests can take home as a gift. Nailed it!
Do you guys know anything about these goldfish bowls?
Certainly do.
It's just that quite a lot of the goldfish are dead.
Oh, shit!
Stinks.
Help me! Find some alive ones and put them on the top table. I need this. Sorry, God. Not that you can possibly exist.
crying, are you?
No, I'm just doing a poo.
Bloody hell. You alright?
All better now.
Hurry up, you're going to miss the speeches.
And I think everyone will agree that Laura has done a smashing job in helping Sarah to pick out her stunning dress.
Yeah, go Laura.
The only time I've seen Sarah look more gorgeous is in her bikini, which, admittedly, is just an image I've made up in my mind. Thanks very much, and I'm going to pass over to the groom now.
Thanks so much. Cheers.
Oh, he's looking over. Fit. Amazing skin.
Like a baby's.
So well dressed.
Almost like his mum dressed him.
We definitely have a connection. I can feel it.
Bunny, he's sitting on the kids' table. He's eating jelly.
I know what's happening here. This is a textbook fanny block.
No, what's happening here is you've run out of options and you're panic buying.
I'd like to thank my wife. Feels weird saying that.
Why do you always have to have a conquest anyway? Why can't you have a good time without having a shag lined up?
Right.
Sorry, I mean spiritual connection.
I'm Meg, and I can't stand anyone else having a good time. Nice table decorations, by the way.
Shush. You really do look stunning today, Mrs. Keswick.
Oh, I'm Meg, and I'm such a failure. I messed up again.
I just wanted to say that I'm really excited to spend the rest of my life with you.
Oh, I'm Bunny. I'll fuck anything. I want to fuck my cousin. I was talking about her. Sorry, carry on.
There are a lot of takes to get something like that.
Not really, 'cause you just don't have time. Like, I mean, that whole sequence was probably, you know, half or a third of what we did that day. So you're really packing it in. So I mean, that's the performers are all great at this stuff. They've often Jess Crane now is the writer of all that stuff, so she's kind of on top of it. So no, you get as much as you can, but you've got to move pretty quick.
And budget-wise?
I would say that's maybe a sixth or something of the budget of Vera. So it's how that manifests itself. You kind of got a smaller crew, and you've just got a lot more to do in a day. That's generally how it works. You still have to do a broadcastable, decent job, but you just got to pack a lot more in. So where we would maybe cover that whole sequence of Vera and Aidan going up to the crime scene is on the page is maybe 6/8 of a page or something like that, and we've covered it in a whole bunch of locations with pretty shots. Here you've got that wedding scene was maybe 3 pages or something, and you are kind of doing a big wide and 2 closer shots. So each slate is rolling for a lot longer. So you just don't have that flexibility to pick little beats that might be best served by a different shot. You have to kind of pick shots that will hoover up quite a lot of moments and be smart about them so that they. So I'm trying to do, I had filtered the camera and I was trying to light in such a way that I got something out of it, so it looked as nice as it could do. But it's just all about getting those pages shot.
So Paul, we're about to come to a clip of yours, which is a very long-running formula documentary, very successful one. Who do you think you are? Probably not what you would usually do, but you were working with a director you know, but it is a format. Just talk to us a little bit before we see the clip about the strictures that puts on you.
Working to a format, they obviously, by the nature of it, they like their beginning, middle and end. There's almost in acts. There has to be some jeopardy. So you have to, and it's all shot in sequence, not like the American one. They really don't know what's going to be unveiled. So you do have to capture those moments. When they're told something about their family history, but you do have to fit into certain pigeonholes. There's not much room for going off piece, as it were, or doing a sequence that was never going to make it into the film. But I'd worked with the director for years, and we put in our own input into it and made it look nice, I think. And because it all depends on who you're with as well. And we were lucky enough to have Len Goodman, who's a good laugh and good fun, and you wouldn't believe he's as old as he is. But someone a bit like Rolando, who was just easy to work with and just made our job so much easier.
Let's have a look at the clip, please.
And go into the workhouse, and then on to John Cecil and his story, how he was a weaver and how he gradually, through circumstances not of his own making, ended up in a workhouse. You know, it's tinged with sadness and, in a way, pride as well, that they worked so hard and struggled on. And it's just a wonderful story. It's just been marvellous.
Having explored his grandfather Albert Eldridge's side of the family, Len now wants to investigate his grandmother Louisa's line.
Well, I do know that my great-great-grandfather, I think, was from Poland, Sosnowski. And I want to find out a little bit about that, how this Polish person came to England and London and what made him come over.
Len was recently contacted by a distant relative who's given him some information about the Polish side of his family. It takes Len first to Portsmouth.
Well, a nice chap from Yorkshire, Gordon, kindly sent me some information regarding my ancestors, which we have here. Now, he sent me a very interesting letter, and in it he writes, our ancestor Joseph Sosnowski had probably been exiled from Poland, and there is a memorial in Kingston Cemetery, Portsmouth, listing all 212 Polish soldiers aboard the Marianne, including Joseph Sosnowski. So I'm going to have a look round and hopefully shed a little bit more light on the Sosnowskis. Now, Polish soldiers who arrived in Portsmouth from Gdansk aboard the battleship Marianne in 1834. And here they're all listed. Now, let's have a look down here. And here he is. Joseph Sosnowski. But then it says Jazda Krakowska. I don't know, is that the regiment or what? I don't know. Now, what were they doing coming here from Gdansk in 1834? But there's a further plaque here which reads, lest we forget the kindness shown and the help given by the people of Britain's premier naval port, Portsmouth, to 212 Polish soldiers, members of the first Polish community in Britain, who arrived in Portsmouth in February 1834 after having taken part in the November uprising against Tsarist Russian oppression, which took place in Warsaw in 1830 and 1831. Well, the plot thickens and the mystery continues. It's incredible. We've got these 212 Polish soldiers suddenly landing in Portsmouth because of some uprising that occurred in Warsaw. Now, what the uprising is about, I haven't a clue. So I'm going off to jolly old Poland and I'm going to find out.
So what were you able to bring to that, Paul?
I guess still trying to make it look filmic, just trying to get different shots and not trying to make it just sort of following someone around with a camera. And completely different to the first clip you saw of mine. With that, you could repeat things. So Len would go to the, we'd capture it for the first time, get his first thoughts, and then you could do it again in close-ups because it's that sort of program, and you know they've paid a lot of money for him. They want to see his big close-up, and that's the formula it was. And you go along with that, but you can still add bits and pieces into it, and you know, still construct a nice sequence. It doesn't have to look all on the shoulder, crash bang wallop. I think you can still try and let it breathe, but a lot of that is done in the edit. I mean, I let those shots run for a long time when he's at the memorial, but you know, it's BBC One, so it has to be a little bit quicker. So it's a different animal than the film in Chile, really.
We're going to move quickly on because we are sadly running out of time. We're going to look at Red Dwarf, which is one of Ed's recent productions. Just talk us into it quickly, and then we'll...
Well, Red Dwarf was important to me because my kind of break into TV was operating on Series 10, which was 2011, I think, 2010 maybe. So then time passed. I'd shot a pilot for Doug Naylor, who wrote and directed Red Dwarf, and then they asked me back to shoot 2 series back to back, which we did at Pinewood. So it was an interesting one for me because it was I wanted to treat it as kind of a single camera. My pitch was let's just assume it's aliens, but it just happens to have jokes in it. Let's kind of take the world seriously. So we had single camera stuff on location, which the first half of this clip is, or first 2/3. Then we also had this multi-camera stuff because they very much like doing Red Dwarf in front of a live audience. So we were in Pinewood TV studios with 4 cameras every Friday. We'd have 250 audience members in, and we'd record 20 pages in 3 hours, which is, I'd never done anything. It was much more like my old theatre time, actually, instead of putting on a show. Actually, John Daly, who Paul gaffed for, was the DP who was doing Birds of Feather in the studio before me, and I turned up sort of desperate to find out how do you like multi-camera. So I tried to build lots of lights into the set and make it as visually interesting as possible, knowing that I wouldn't really be able to light each shot independently.
Let's have a look.
Who's these notes? The guy's name was Romero G. Gonzalez, and he was a stasis booth engineer.
Ah, Mrs. Robertson, we're ready to start your procedure now. And this must be Mrs. Johnson, the donor. No need to be frightened. There was a time I was a teensy tiny, teeny, weeny bit mad. But not anymore. Look, there's my all clear.
We gotta go. We'll close the door behind us as we pelt out.
I can see you're both quite nervous. Perhaps you need a little something to help you relax.
Right.
There, that wasn't so bad, was it?
Where are they? Tracking them, sir. Down here.
So you float, gently as you dream. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is such a scream. Ah, Mrs. Biddle, you're a little early. Take a seat in the waiting room. I'll show you where it is.
Sir, let's fire them up and get them out of here. Move, Crichton, go! Go, 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 go! Coming round, sir. Here he comes. Yes, he's coming round. I don't remember drinking anything. You were attacked, sir, remember? Totally smacked, aren't I?
Didn't I tell you he'd say that?
All is not lost, sir. The perpetrator of this act of derangement was clearly some mentally unhinged droid patient who managed to escape his shackles. Mr. Rimmer and I, however, managed to obtain the services of a state-of-the-art Medibot.
He's a state-of-the-art Medibot. It's only got 4 buttons.
Brilliant.
Obviously, huge numbers of visual effects there. How do you shoot for the visual effects?
They're so good at them now that you kind of just get on with it. You don't really have to do too much. We use a lot less green screen than we used to because it tends to cause more problems than it solves. But we had a brilliant visual effects supervisor. It was his company that was doing it, and he was a massive Red Dwarf fan, and he wanted to be on set as much as possible, so that really helps because you can then just all agree what you're supplying. So occasionally we shot in slightly higher resolution for that stuff, but by and large they seamlessly work it in.
A multi-camera with an audience, that's quite a different thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really interesting. Because I'd operated on the series before, where we'd used it was more single. We'd used Red Epics, and they were on kind of like location tripods and things, even for the audience stuff, which was quite frustrating. So when I got the gig to DP these series, I was like, let's use Alexas, let's get the zoom lens that I know will cover everything, and let's put them on the studio kind of pedestals, because just from operating, I knew that was going to be the only way to get the cameras around. So we had kind of a hybrid, had 4 brilliant operators, and then I was kind of in the gallery with a fantastic lighting console operator who everything was, I lit the whole set with pretty much all LEDs, so you could change the color of anything and move everything around very quickly. So that was all kind of done. So I was just sitting comfortably in a nice air-conditioned gallery. It was very relaxing. But it's difficult because just every cameraman really wants to just light with one camera, because then you know exactly what everything's doing. And when you've got 4 cameras, ultimately against each other, you just try and make sure that wherever a camera could possibly point is something that you would like to be filmed, because you don't really have that much control over where the cameras are pointing at that point. You're just kind of lighting it and letting the operators do their thing.
Okay, we're very short of time, which I'm sorry, but we've got such a richness of material. But what I would like to ask finally, if anybody out there wants to follow in your footsteps, how do they do it?
Ed? I think just shoot as much as you possibly can. I think there is an argument to be said for working your way up through the ranks, absolutely. I didn't do that, and there's pros, and I regret some aspects of that. I do think if you want to be a DP, nothing quite beats lighting yourself. We say it's like trying to learn to play the piano by being the page turner. Like, it doesn't matter how close to the piano you're sitting. But just get on set as much as possible. Take it seriously, care about it, and write. I think when you start writing to people, asking them stuff about it, do that well, because you get all the emails I do, and a lot of people do it very badly. I do agree. Go out and make films, but more importantly, from a documentary point of view, get a great story, get a great subject, and just go out and do it. It doesn't have to be far from home. There's stories all around us. And collaborate with people. Filming's a collaboration. And the temptation now is to send people out a single camera, do the sound, do everything. You don't get a very good product with that. Get a good mate who's a sound man. Get a friend as a director. And the 3 of you go out and collaborate. And it's much better if you all go out and make a film rather than you go out on your own and try and do it on your own. And I think, and don't be afraid to make mistakes. Lighting-wise, just go into a room, turn all the lights out, see what the natural light's doing first before you even put anything on a stand. And it might look great, it might look terrible. But don't be afraid to, less is more. But I would, sound is so important on documentaries. I think that's sort of being forgotten now. I think how many times sometimes you see something on television that's in English, but it needs subtitles. And it's what people are saying, and it's what their reaction is. And I think if you can collaborate with somebody on sound, I think that would be a fantastic start.
Ed, collaboration? Is it all about teamwork in the end?
It absolutely is, yeah. And you're just a guy with a light meter, nothing will happen. I think gaffer is a very important relationship. I think learning to light properly is probably more important than the camera fiddly stuff is initially. But finding directors, I think also in career terms, like getting in with the directors early when they're your contemporaries and they're just starting out in spec projects. It's very, very rare. I think probably either of us work for a director that's completely new to us. There's always a link. There's always our agents do their very best, and you do get those jobs every now and then. But it tends to be from your own connections. And if you can form a strong base of people who you come up with, they will be the people who will be calling you when they get the big one, hopefully.
Yeah, I don't think anyone will take a chance now with budgets like they are now. They can't afford to make those mistakes or to reshoot a whole sequence that they used to. Say, well, that didn't work, let's just reshoot the whole thing again. That's never going to happen. So they play it safe. It's not always the best option, but I think if you stick with people that you know, that chance will come along, hopefully, and just keep that collaboration going. I don't think you're ever going to get cold called and say, come and shoot my next feature. But you never know, you might do. But just work with people you like working with. Filming should be fun. I think it should be an enjoyable process. Even if you're doing a serious subject, filming should be fun, and I think a lot of people have lost sight of that. We're not saving lives. It's entertainment. I think you should have fun while you're doing it, and just enjoy yourselves. And I think that's what that's my advice to you.
It's a very good place to stop. Can I say a huge thank you, please, to Ed and to Paul for joining us and sharing their work with us.